Hi guys, welcome to Pixel Affair. It's Kobe here. So in today's video, we are going to see how we will do something like this using the standard Cinema 4D particle system. And you are going to use the same technique or formula that we used in our last tutorial, which is the particle flow tutorial, which I have here. So you can see this particular tutorial. Right, we are going to use the same technique to actually recreate this, just that in this time we will mesh it. So like I said, the same technique, and I had different variations of it using the same technique. And this is actually meshing the first tutorial, which is the particle flow that I did, right? This particular one, actually meshing it in this case, right? So we are going to see how we will do this. So let's actually get into Cinema 4D and see how we will do that. So I'm in Cinema 4D and I'm using Cinema 4D 2024.2, and you can see this is the original scene which I actually used to create this particular shot here, right? So if I hit play, you can see we have our standard particles which I've actually used the matrix object to clone on, and you can see it's leading around the box and eventually entering the box like that. So basically that's what I actually did. We'll create a new scene to show exactly how we can do something similar to this, and you can see this is the mesh of it entering the box. So let's actually go into a new scene. So I have a new scene here and I have the milk box already in here, and this is a spline which I used the helix spline and I shaped it in a way that it will eventually end in the milk box. Now the milk box is fine. If I come in here to the asset browser and search for milk box, you can see this is the milk box I used. So let's actually go ahead and see how we will do the particles following this path, and it's quite easy, right? Like I said in the first tutorial, if you've watched it, everything has been explained there, but I'll quickly show here as well. So I'll for now hide the milk box and I'll come into my simulation emitter and I'll create my emitter, right? So like I said, there are two ways of that you can use to do this, right? So you can either use the deformer way or the full simulation way. So let me use the full simulation in this case. So let me get my particle to the starting point of where I want my particles, like where I want it to start. So I'll move it down somewhere here, right? And I'll make my emitter a bit smaller, something like this. Now move it something like this here. So if I select the emitter, let me actually come into the attributes and let's even make the Y size smaller, like 5, and this one like 20. Oh, the X like 20. So this should be fine. And if we hit play, you can see we are generating some particles. So let's go ahead and come into the particles tab and let's increase our number of particles, probably to 3000 for now. So if you hit play, you can see our particles are generating. But like I said, we want to use forces. So the first force we are going to use is the field force. So I come into my simulation tab, forces, and I'll choose field force. I'll select the field force and I'll actually change the velocity type to set absolute velocity, and I'll drag and drop my spline in there. I'll select the spline and come down here where these tabs are. Let's go to the direction tab and let's change it from use value to normalize, right? And now let's come back up here and let's increase the strength to like probably 150. You can hide the field force, and if we hit play, you can see our particles are following the path of our spline, which is exactly what we want. So let's actually increase the strength to probably 200 and also increase our time frame to maybe 800. So if we hit play now, you can see our particles are following our path, right? And also let's select the particles and increase the stop emission to maybe 500, right? So let's see what we have here. Now in my original case, I actually didn't use this technique though. What I did is that I combined the two techniques. So I actually created a long line and I used the spline wrap for it to wrap around this. But in this case, you can use this same technique. So if I hit play, let's see what happens. can see our particles are following our spline, right? So eventually it gets up and gets follow. Now the reason why I actually use my old technique is that you can see whilst it keeps going, the angle sort of keeps changing a bit, and it veers off our spline. Right, that's why I use the initial technique. So let's actually do that. So let's leave this spline there. I'll come down here and I'll create a normal helix spline once again. I'll change the direction to maybe this, and I'll make it oh, I'll send and the end radius to 0 and the start radius 0. So now we have a straight line, and let's make the line a bit longer, like 1000, maybe 1005 even. Right. So now we are going to use this one rather to direct control our field force. So let's select the field force. Let's delete the path first, and now let's go ahead and drag in this helix, like the straight line. Right. Call it line norm. So let's select the helix, now the field force, select the line, and let's do all the things we did initially. Change the value from use value to normalize in the direction tab, and also I think yeah, it's fine. So if we hit play, you can see our particles are following the path. Let's actually select the particles. Where is it? And make sure it's exactly at the beginning of our spline. So let's reset the coordinates so it's somewhere here, and you can even rotate it a bit like that, minus 90. So now this should be fine from here going, and now let's come into our perspective view. So if I hit play, you can see our particles are flowing, right? This is exactly what we want. So now let's go ahead and continue to add our forces and everything. So I'll come in here. For now, I like this field force, the way it's following like it's making the particles follow the path. So let's go ahead and add a bit of turbulence. So I'll come into my simulation forces, turbulence, and I'll actually drag the turbulence. Now select the turbulence and let's increase it to maybe something like 66 will be fine. Let's increase the scale radius and hit play. You can see it's following, giving us this turbulence. So this is our first particles that we want to use, right? Let's increase it a bit. The turbulence is fine, and I think the strength can increase it a bit more. So something like this will be our first particles, right? Now everything is fine, but like I said, I usually don't want the turbulence to go way here. So in the turbulence fields tab, I can drag in the line once again, select the line, and now instead of along, let's change it to radius, and now we can use the radius to control how far like our turbulence pushes our particles. So we want it to stay within like maybe it's some 20 centimeters so that it doesn't go overboard. All right, so now that everything is flowing smoothly, like we are cool, right? So the next thing is, let's actually come into our mograph menu, create a matrix object, select the matrix object and change the mode from grid to object, and the object you want to clone on is the emitter. So now if we hit play, you can see our emitter, our matrix has following our particles, right? So now let's create a new null object, put our matrix in the null object, and select, come into our deformation, now create a spline wrap, also put it in the same null object as the matrix, and now select the spline wrap in the tabs, the spline where it's asking for a spline. Let's now drag and drop in our path in there, and now I can see our spline matrix are following at the path of the spline that we created initially. So if I go back and hit play, you can see it's following, but right from frame 1 everything is sort of filling our path, right? So let's select the spline wrap, and instead of fit to spline, we will change it to keep length, and now if we hit play, you can see it follows the path like exactly how we want it, like that. Let's see what we have, and eventually flows into our object. So another thing we have to do is that we have to at some point make the particle disappear. So maybe let's check, hit play, and at frame we will see frame, let's go, keeps going, maybe at frame 400, right? Let's go to select our emitter at frame 400. The particle life, let's set it to 400 and add a little bit of variation, like 10% variation. So now our particles will disappear when you get after it's lit for 400 frames, right? And this should be fine. So from here going, we can simply go ahead and mesh our matrix object. So you can see once it gets here, it starts disappearing, and that's what you want. And now if I bring in my let me unhide my milk can, you can see it's coming in like we want. So we can actually adjust the milk can or adjust the spline, any of them that you want. So let me actually first of all make the matrix a bit smaller. So I select the matrix and now actually change the scale to 0.1. Make sure all these are selected and this one is highlighted. Control enter to affect all of it, right? And now one thing that we want is that when our particles, for instance, if I select the turbulence, right, turbulence here, and increase the strength, where is it, the turbulence, and increase the strength a bit more, and also maybe the scale to maybe 50, right? And let's hit play. You can see there will be some movements. So at the tip here, we wouldn't actually get it to comply. Let's see what happens. When you get to the tip, you can see because of the movement, it looks awkward. It keeps moving back, like for instance here, keeps going back. And there's this issue as well where sometimes your spline wrap sort of stop moving even though the particles are moving, right? And I think how I saw it when I came to the bounding box, I actually click on fixed bounding box, and I think it sort of helped, right? So after everything is generated to get aligned, I click fixed bounding box, and now it continued. So yeah, let's see what happens. But it's actually pushed our particles backwards, which I don't like. But see, let's get it to play. Select our spline, come to the bounding box once again. Let's see what happens. Let's leave it, and there it fits like this. So hit play, and I think now I can actually hit fix bounding box, right? So now at the tip here, you can see it keeps sort of, because of the turbulence, it keeps veering on and off, but we want it to force, like everything at this point, be forced and fit within the lips of the box. So we will use another field force, which I showed in the first video, right? So we'll come into our forces once again, simulation forces, and I'll create another field force, drag it, and now let's use the same line spline that we created. So I'll drag and drop in the line, select it, and come make sure in the direction tab is set to normalized, and also set this one to set absolute velocity, and let's increase the strength to like maybe 50, right? So this one, what we want it to do is sort of attract the particles together. So if we select it, come down here and hit play. Let's actually hit play. Field force. Let's actually for now disable our matrices and bring in this one. Hit play. Oh, let's select the field force once again and select the line. Come to the layer. Instead of it being along, let's change it from along to radius, right? The second field force. So now you can see it's changed. like the look has changed. So if I hit play, you can see it will be pushing our particles away, right? But we want it to sort of bring it together. So let's come up here. Instead of 50, you can set it to -50 rather, or we can actually leave it at 50 and the direction invert the direction of the normalized, but any of them works. So I'll set it to -50. And now if I hit play, you can see, let's hide our mill cutting once again, right from frame 1, and also hide the field force. It keeps attracting everything together. You can even hide our spline wrap. I don't like it in the scene. And also anything that's very distracting, let's also hide the work plane. So I come to filters, work plane, and I hide it. So if I hit play, you can see it's attracting it together right at frame, the initial, like the start of our spline. So we don't want that. We want it to happen at the end. So I'll select the field force, the second field force, come to its field tab and drag in the line again, and this time select the line. And now if we hit play, you can see it doesn't happen, but whilst it's getting to it starts attracting it. But we don't want it to start quick this early, so we will push the start range start for it to like 60. And now maybe at the end here somewhere it will start attracting it together, something like that. But it's too early, so let's push it a bit more. Yeah, something like this, right? So from here going, you sort of push it together. So now if we enable our matrix and enable our spline wrap, it should be able to fit. Let's hit play to see. I think it happens too early, so let's reduce it. Oh, actually, let's increase it more. Still not working. Oh, okay, so I think we should actually push it more. Hit play. Let's see what's going on. It follows our path, right? You can see right here it starts attracting it, so we can actually push it more further. I don't know why um it stopped very early. Let's actually select the strength and reduce it to maybe 30 and see what happens. I think it's too early, so we can actually go ahead, select it once again, select the field force, come to the layer, oh I mean the field tab, and the start range. Let's even set it way closer to like maybe 99, so that maybe really at the tip it starts doing that thingy. So it's really pushing. So let's maybe 99.9. You see, I don't know why it's actually cutting it off this quick. I don't know. Or maybe we can change it from pair to a whole spline. Should be working fine. I don't know why. Oh, I've seen why. So due to the length of our spline, the line is quite short, so it happens quite faster. So let's actually make the line longer. So let's set the line to something like 3000. I think that's why the line is quite short. So the um the field force start affecting our particles very early. So let's make the line longer. So 3000, and I think if now I select the field force, reduce the to something like 80 or even more. Let's actually see. It should be fine. So I'm actually leaving all this in so that like when you are working, sometimes these kind of technicalities happen and it gets confused. But in the process, like you have to find solutions. So yeah, now I can see it goes further, and everything. Yeah, so I like that. So we can now select using the length of the line. See, maybe hit play. Let's keep it playing and now can adjust it to see where it sort of makes it full, right? So I think maybe 55 will be fine, or even maybe 50 will be fine, or still can push it further, maybe 40. So you can see at the tip here now, it folds, like everything comes together. So that's exactly what we want, right? If you go ahead and hit play, follows our spline, and when it gets here, right, you can see it starts pulling it together. So maybe I think it starts too early, so you can push it back. So 50. So you basically have to play around with it to eventually find the place where you think everything is fine. So I think maybe 58, 59 would be something like that would be cool for now. So now that we have our first one generated, we can select our emitter, increase the number of particles maybe to 6,000 by 6,000, right? And now you have enough particles. You can actually even increase probably the size here to maybe 8, something like that, right? And now we have our first particles. So because we have the matrix, you can actually even can see it's very uniform, so you can actually add randomness to our this matrix. So I select the matrix, come to our effectors, and I add random. It's pushing everything away. I can just reduce it to like maybe 2 by 2 by 2 to give it a bit of randomness. And now we can put this matrix in a volume measure, so a volume builder. So I'll create a volume builder and bring it down. Like I can leave it here. Select the volume builder and drag and drop the matrix down here into the attributes, the object tab, to this field, and you can see actually this is the problem. You can see now it's meshing our matrix, but it's not meshing the one following the path, right? So we can select the matrix, delete it, and rather drag and drop the whole spline, the whole node, the node that has the spline wrap and the matrix in it. Select the volume builder and drag the null rather into our volume builder, and you can see it's now meshing the one that's following the path. So we can actually select the volume builder and reduce the voxel size to maybe 2 or even 1, which is fine. You can see we have blobs of meshes around our particles. So we can come down here with the null selected in this tab. You can come down, you can see the radius is set to 15. We can reduce it to something like 3, right? And now I think it's cool. We can add a bit of smoothing, and now you can see we have sort of our mesh following our path, right? So that's basically how I did this. Now from here you can actually go ahead and mesh our volume measure, and now we have real mesh where we can actually add textures and things to it. So this is basically how I did it. Now after I had this one, so this will be like the initial, like the main core of our liquid flowing, right? So what I did is I'll select the emitter, come to the in here include tab, I'll set it, change all of it. Let's bring it back to frame 0, change it from exclude to include, and I'll include all these forces. So I'll drag in the field force, turbulence, every force that I have here, I'll drag it in here, right? And now I'll create a whole null object and drag all of this that I've created, all of them, into this null object, and I'll call it flow 1 or liquid 1, however you want to name it. So this will be our first liquid that we have. Then I create a secondary liquid, right? Something different. So I'll select this one, hold control to drag and create a second copy. I'll actually name this one 2. And now with this, I can select the emitter and the turbulence. Let me select the turbulence. Let's increase it to like maybe 150. This is the second one. And actually select the emitter. We can actually select the can increase the size to something 24 or something, increase the number or reduce the number of particles to maybe 4,000. Like do like variation, change the seed, yeah, like all those things that will actually add a bit of variation to it. You can actually do those things. and then let's hit play. So let's first of all disable the volume measure and the volume builder in this case. So you can see we have actually in here. So you can see, and we can actually select the matrix and change the color so that you see what's happening. So I can come in here and I'll select this matrix. Where is it? This matrix, and actually change the color down here, something like red, so that you can see we have a new particle generating, right? And we can select the turbulence once again, come to the fields, and let's increase the radius for this one to from maybe 30, right? So that you can see we have two different particles, right? And when you go into this volume measure, enable it, enable, you can see it has its own mesh as well. So if you go here as well, enable the volume measure and the volume, I can see it's different. Actually, the volume builder should be separate. I think that's what you should do. So let's delete the volume builder for this one actually, and drag and drop this volume builder out. So we shouldn't add the volume builder to the null, the flows, right? So the volume builder should be separate, and all of them should fall into one volume builder. So now let's select this. You can see we have the null one. This null, where is it? This null, I can call it null one or flow one, right? The volume builder, this is the flow one, and now the flow two null, you can also call it flow two, and you can drag that one into our volume builder as well. So if I select the volume builder, you can drag in the flow two, right? You can see it's now blending with this one, and now we can select the flow two. Let's drag it down to mix. You can see because of the smoothing, it's sort of disappeared. So we can select the flow two and increase the radius to like 3 as well, right? You can actually even set this the voxel size to 0.5 so that we can get more detail. So basically that's how, or let's bring it back to maybe 0.8. So that's basically how I actually played around with it. So I sort of played with the turbulence and everything with various flows. I actually did 4 flows to actually get where I go. So let's open the original scene of the one I created, and you can see if I go ahead and hide our mesh, you can see I have 4 different flows. So I have flow 1, flow 2, flow 3, and 4, and all of them have let me actually hide the flow 1 and 2. So you can see the flow, we have very few particles, but it's widely spread apart, which is the flow 4, right? Spread apart to give you sort of like small bubbles outside the liquid. And then the flow 2 is also a bit spread apart, but quite close to give it a bit of nice flow. Then the flow 2, let me bring back the flow 3. Flow 2 is literally almost similar to the flow 1, but a bit deviate a little bit. And now the flow 1 as well, right? So if I combine it, and you can see it all come together. So you can see the flow 4 is the one that gives you the mesh, like that's in the bubbles and stuff like that. So if I enable a volume measure, you can see this is what the flow 1, flow 4 is doing, and the flow 2 is giving us this extra and stuff like that. And then I'll enable the volume measure. So I play around with this one, like recording it in the tutorial will actually make it quite long because you have to play around with settings and eventually see which one is good for you. After that, what I did is that I now everything when I was cool with the look, like what I want, what I did is I baked now the volume measure, right click. So let me actually go here, right click with the volume measure, right click on it, and now say bake as alembic, right? So if I bake as alembic, now I have my alembic here, right click, bake as alembic, and you can select where you want to bake it. So I'll just go ahead and select it, and now allow it to bake so that we see what happens. So after you've allowed it to bake, right, let me actually go ahead and hide this once here, all the flows. This is the original scene that I'm in again. So I'll go ahead and hide all of the these ones. After you've allowed it to bake, you have so you can go back. I think it should be fine. Select it. We will have something like this. So you can this example. So this is the one that I showed. So you can see with the Alembic now you can scrub through. And now what I did with the Alembic is you can now go ahead and set the time because we simulated it. It was quite slow. So if I select the Alembic, come down to its attribute, you can see I've offset the time. So if you want to keep however you want it to start, because I don't want it to start right from the beginning and everything moving slow, so I offset the time. You can see it starts from frame 174, right, and I keyframe leaving the offset so that it moves a bit faster, and from here it moves smoothly. Now if you feel like it's too slow, you can actually even increase the speed to like 150, right, and now let's hit play. You can see it will move a bit faster. You can even increase it more, and you can see now it's way faster, or can bring it down, and now it moves smooth. So that's basically what I did, and from here I went ahead to use Arnold to render, creating a normal HDRI. So this is my render, like one key light from the top and an HDRI with an HDRI image in here, and that's basically what I did. I added a normal standard material anode surface, right? Let me actually open the network editor. Nothing fancy, and I added like something, a base color or something like this. And also what's key in something like a milk is subsurface scattering, right, which I actually added like scale of 8. I played around to eventually see something I feel like I like, and if I should hit render, go to another IPR, I think it should be fine in this case. So that's basically all I did, right? A normal standard anode surface with one key light from the top here. Is the light, right? And also HDRI. So the HDRI does a lot of the job bringing out, right? And this is the key. If I disable the key light, you can see, so the HDRI brings it out, and the key light to give it some sort of highlights at the top. And that's basically how I actually rendered it. Nothing fancy, right? This is something quick I wanted to do this morning and render, so I didn't want to take time, spend a lot of time on it. So this is basically how I actually built this whole scene. And similarly to the one I did, like I said, similarly to the one I did with the first particle flow, if I come in here and actually hide disable the IP, I can see this is the same thing I actually did, and I sort of meshed it. Let's enable the mesh to see what you have, like the video I showed in the initial stage, this particular one, right, where this like some cola or soda looking liquid. I use the same technique, right? You can see this is the volume measure, and actually use this standard surface from Arnold to render. So that's basically, if I actually, let me hit the IPR to see this one to Arnold IPR, and I think this one should be fine as well. So you can see, let's actually disable the particles. I don't like them. Listen, I mean, you have particles around it, but basically that's the same thing, right? With just a normal HDRI, like I have here the Arnold sky that I've added in an HDRI. So that's how basically I did these two scenes, and I hope you've learned a thing or two from these videos and you can use it in your project. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.